Good evening, councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. I hereby declare the 2025 Annual General Meeting of Electors of the City of Joondalup open at 5:30 p.m. Members of the gallery are reminded that it's a requirement of the Meeting Procedures Local Law 2013 to act in a courteous and respectful manner when in the council chamber. You are asked to show respect to anyone who is exercising their right to ask questions of the council and/or deliver public statements. I also ask that respect extend to people whenever they are on city premises, while waiting for or having taken their opportunity to ask questions or deliver a public statement. Under the local law, people must not create a disturbance by interrupting or interfering with the orderly conduct of proceedings. This includes expressing approval or dissent by conversing or by other means. Using personal electronic recording devices to record others in this meeting is also prohibited under the City's Meeting Procedures Local Law. And I'd also like to remind members of the public to show respect for City's elected members and also staff during proceedings. This will be live streamed in accordance with the recording and live streaming of council meetings council policy, and the meeting will be video recorded and live streamed on the City's website, with the exception of confidential items. Of course, they're not being confidential items this evening, and periods of adjournment as determined by the presiding member. Cameras have been positioned to minimise public attendance being filmed. However, by attending this meeting, attendees consent to this being a possibility, and recordings will also be made available on the City's website following the meeting. Official records of the meeting will be the written minutes kept in accordance with the Local Government Act 1995 and any relevant regulations. Now, in attendance at this evening's AGM are Deputy Mayor Councillor Adrian Hill, Councillor Daniel Kingston, Councillor Rebecca Pizzi, Councillor Philip Vinciullo, Councillor John Chester, Councillor Rowan O'Neill, Councillor Russ Fishwick, Councillor John Raftis, and myself, Mayor Albert Jacob. Mr CEO, do we have apologies for this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Hamilton Prime is on a leave of absence and Councillor Jones is an apology for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. I've also received apologies from Councillor May and also Councillor Hutton. Now, I'd like to welcome electors of the City of Joondalup and other members of our community to this annual general meeting. This evening's meeting has been convened in accordance with Section 5.27 of the Local Government Act 1995. The meeting was advertised as follows in the Perth Now newsletter on the 19th of December of 2024, in social media posts on the 19th of December, on public notices on the City's website and also public notice boards on the 19th of December 2024, and the public notice e-newsletter, which the City published also on the 19th of December 2024. The annual report was made available for public viewing after the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 10th of December 2024, where Council adopted the 23-24 annual report. Regulation 18 of the Local Government Administration Regulations states that the procedures to be followed at electors' meetings are to be determined by the person presiding at the meeting, which is myself. I will use the City's Meeting Procedures Local Law as a broad basis for procedures determined at this meeting. Also, in an endeavour to provide equal and fair opportunity for all electors to address the meeting, procedures that I have adopted for this evening's meeting of the Annual General Meeting of Electors are as follows. Only electors of the City of Joondalup are entitled to speak and vote. Electors wishing to make a statement have a maximum of 2 minutes in which to make their statement. Electors will have an opportunity to make a further statement of up to 2 minutes, following all other electors being provided an opportunity to make statements. Electors will be offered an opportunity to ask up to 2 questions at a time. Electors will be offered another opportunity to ask further questions, following all other electors being provided an opportunity to raise questions. There are to be no adverse reflections on elected members or City employees, and should this occur, the statement or question will be ruled out of order and the elector will be asked to resume their seat. Any motions that are to be moved must be moved and seconded before any discussion is to occur. A mover for a motion has 2 minutes in which to speak on the motion. The seconder of a motion has 2 minutes in which to speak on the motion, and then debate may ensue. The mover of the motion has a right of reply for up to 2 minutes, and all motions are determined by a majority vote of electors present. Each elector at the meeting is entitled to 1 vote on each matter being put to a vote, but does not have to vote. All decisions are to be made by a simple majority. Voting is to be conducted so that no voter's vote is secret, and any other rules or procedures not defined are to be determined by the Mayor as the person presiding over the meeting. Now, prior to discussion on the contents of the 23-24 annual report, a video presentation will now be shown outlining the events, activities and achievements of the City of Joondalup for the 23-24 financial year. Thank you.
Celebrating 25 years is the theme of this year's annual report, as the City of Joondalup reflects on its first quarter century. The journey begins on the 1st of July 1998 and culminates in Joondalup as we know it today, a vibrant destination that is home to a connected community with a bright and prosperous future. The city celebrated this milestone with a series of events that captivated the imagination and showcased Joondalup's arts and culture, iconic landscapes, cosmopolitan cafes, and over 300 parks and reserves. The city is also home to thousands of businesses and professional services, several tertiary and post-secondary education and training complexes, and a growing number of health facilities. The Joondalup Council adopted a responsible budget for 2023-24, recognising the cost of living our community expects. The city has one of the lowest rates in the dollar for any local government in Western Australia. The 2023 local government election resulted in councillors Nige Jones and John Raftis being re-elected to the Joondalup Council. 4 new members were elected to the council: Lewis Hutton in North Ward, Rebecca Pizzi in Central Ward, Rowan O'Neill in South East Ward, and Philip Vinchulo in South West Ward. Tom McLean, Russell Polivka, John Logan and Suzanne Thompson chose not to seek re-election. Joondalup Festival was named Best Cultural, Arts and Music Event at the Australian Event Awards and Symposium, beating a world-class field of finalists after attracting more than 250,000 visitors during the 2023 event. The festival was part of the city's impressive calendar of events held throughout the year, which make Joondalup the cultural capital of Perth's Northern Corridor and a destination of choice for residents and visitors. Craigie Leisure Centre won the Community Facility of the Year Award at the Parks and Leisure Australia Regional Awards of Excellence, recognising the outstanding impact of its major refurbishment. The centre has achieved a phenomenal 56% increase in membership over the past 12 months, 4 years ahead of schedule. The city received a number of other awards and achievements, servicing our residents and the wider community across 2023-24. The city's Reconciliation Action Plan was developed and supported by the Reconciliation Action Plan Community Reference Group, setting out 60 actions of both new and existing initiatives to advance reconciliation efforts within the city as an organisation, as well as the broader community. Progress continues to be made on the eagerly anticipated Ocean Reef Marina project, with works commencing on residential and apartment lots, construction of Perth's first coastal pool, a new family-friendly beach, public open spaces and play spaces, as well as new sites for the Ocean Reef Sea Sports Club and Marine Rescue Whitfords. The city's native plant giveaway resulted in 750 residential households receiving 7,850 free native waterwise plants and trees to encourage the creation of waterwise and wildlife-friendly native gardens that connect, cool and green our neighbourhoods. WA Premier Roger Cook offered a congratulatory address at the city's Australia Day citizenship ceremony at Joondalup Resort, one of the largest ceremonies in the nation, where more than 300 residents from over 40 different countries were granted citizenship. The city awarded tenders for construction of the Duncraig Adventure Hub, with extensive community consultation incorporated into the final design. Expected to open in autumn 2025, this transformative project is designed to offer young people and the wider community a vibrant hub to keep active and connect with others, enhancing community well-being and mental health. The 2023-24 financial year saw the city maintain a strong focus on sustainability, livability, active lifestyles and friendly social interactions across our bushland, marine ecosystems, accessible parks and green spaces. Already a world-leading green city, City of Joondalup will continue its strong environmental focus and commitment to social responsibility. We are looking forward to the next 25 years as we continue to build on our strong foundations of being a vibrant place where people live, work and play.
Thank you. The purpose of this evening's meeting is to discuss the contents of the annual report and also to raise any general business that electors may have. In accordance with the Local Government Act, Council adopted the annual report at its ordinary meeting held on the 10th of December last year. Any questions of a general nature raised tonight will be responded to, and questions requiring a more detailed response will be taken on notice, and no discussion will be entered into on matters raised. I now invite members of the public to ask up to 2 questions in relation to the 23-24 annual report, and when addressing the meeting, please use the public microphone and state your name and full address for the public record. Are there any questions on the annual report? Please. Thank you. Mr. Sidiris.
Mitch Sedaris, that's better. Mitch Sedaris, Page Drive, Mulloo. Referring to the annual report, there's a number of pages that deal with the progress of various city projects and programs. And I note that they're all on budget. There's 3 pages of that. Is that correct?
Director Humphrey or Director Parry?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for the question. Yes, we report through to the Council on a quarterly basis with regard to those projects as to whether they're on time and on budget. If there are any amendments to budgets, they are brought through as part of the mid-year budget review or for the Council to consider any changes to the budgets which are applicable to each of those programs. So generally all of those programs are on budget as they specified within the report and the corporate business plan.
Thank you. Do you have a second question, Mr. Sidiris?
Yeah, second question, regarding all those projects that are now declared to us as being on budget, how many of those were amended either during the mid-year review or during the normal course of council meetings at the monthly basis? It's just an extraordinary outcome.
Director Mr. Sidiris, you've attended many AGMs. You know that's not appropriate. Director Humphrey.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would have to take the question on notice to provide the exact number. We do review, obviously, at mid-year review, which is 6 months in, so most of our estimates will only be 6 months old or younger, so that's why we're able to maintain budgets. But any variances that require a change in budget level are brought to Council's attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sidiris.
I do have another question, but if there's nobody else...
Are there further questions on the annual report? If not, Mr. Sidiris, you have an opportunity for further questions.
How many of these projects that are now declared to us as being on budget have been subsequently amended in the past, in the following, 6, 7 months? Because I noticed that one, namely the Mulloo car park upgrade.
I have the question, Mr. Sidiris. Director Humphrey?
Through Mr. Mayor, again, I'll take the question on notice to provide the exact numbers, but to provide some reassurance to the public. Most of our projects, the procurement process involves tenders that range over 3 years. So we know the unit price, contract price for delivery of most of those projects for a 3-year period. So the ability for the infrastructure team to provide an accurate budget is very high because we know what the contractors will be charging us subject to any change in CPI.
Further question, Mr. Sidiris?
I do have one more.
Yep.
Following that, it was noted that the Mulloo car park upgrade would obviously be on budget. Additional monies, I think it went from 350 odd thousand. There was a request for an additional 135,000 or thereabouts the following month, i.e. 1 month later. Please explain.
Again, I think, I'll go to Director Klassen.
but Director Glaston in the first instance, then I might have some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Mr. Sidiris. The changes that's made to the program are made as required. In terms of the detail of the question, I will have to take that on notice and provide you with that information, as I don't have that with me.
Thank you, Mr. Sidiris.
I won't
Thank you.
question the rest of it, but obviously the point's
That
made.
therefore brings us to the conclusion of discussion on the contents of the 23-24 annual report, and we now proceed to general business. As the first part of general business, I'll now proceed to public question time. There's a set of procedures which relates to public question time, including question time at the AGM. Electors will be provided an opportunity to ask two questions, up to two questions at a time, usually sequentially. We'll deal with the first and then the second. Electors will be offered another opportunity to ask further questions following all other electors being provided an opportunity to raise questions. There are to be no adverse reflections on elected members or city employees, and should this occur, the question will be ruled out of order and the elector will be asked to resume their seat. As we often do in council meetings, we maintain a register of persons wishing to ask questions, so I will start there and call forward first Suzanne Apps.
Good evening. Suzanne Apps, 11 Pennant Place, Woodvale. This week, the MLA for Hillary's made an election commitment of $1.2 million for the refurbishment of Mullaloo Surf Club. On further inquiry, Ms Collins advised the full project cost is $2 million and that the City of Joondalup and the Surf Club had only asked for $1.2 million. The residual amount of $840 is being provided by the City of Joondalup. To date, I cannot find any information in the public available City of Joondalup documentation. There's no proposal, a plan, a decision to scope, nor a decision by council to fund the refurbishment. My question is, who at the City of Joondalup has provided the MLA of Hillary's with the amount required, provided a commitment to the funding of $840 by the City of Joondalup, despite council not even considering the proposal?
My recollection is that proposal is in our capital works program. Of course, there's many projects in that capital works program, so I don't know the budget off the top of my head, but I think it's been through several council budget rounds. Director Klassen, we can take the question on notice if needed.
Through Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure, and I'll take the question on notice, but I think in the outer years, the 5-year capital works program, that project has been identified by council as a potential future project.
Thank you. Do you have a second question?
Yes, I do. Many questions one could ask, but the first one is, why would we only ask for why would we only ask for 1.2? Why wouldn't we ask the government for 2 million total? Who decided?
We'll take the question on notice, Ms Apps. I'm just checking, if you bear with me. Yeah, no, the project is definitely in the capital works program. It has been for several years. Well, and yeah, in terms of those details and what was said from the MLA, we'll find out. Thank you, Ms Apps.
It's in the details?
It's been in the... Thank you, Ms Apps. Beth Hewitt.
Beth Hewitt, Woodview Court in Edgewater. My questions are in response to answers provided to Ms Kwok's questions tonight. And my first question is, does the council consider the high turnover of staff and consequential loss of corporate knowledge during the period 1st of July 22 to date sustainable?
Mr CEO.
Thank you for that question through you, presiding member. Assessment of the level of turnover as high or medium or low for that matter needs to be done relative to turnover rates in local governments generally and other comparable organisations. And I would not describe necessarily that the rate of turnover that's reflected in the answer to Ms Kwok's question as being particularly high.
Thank you. Ms Hewitt, do you have a second question?
What's the progress with the workplace enterprise bargaining or whatever it's called in the city?
Mr CEO.
Thank you for the question, and through you, presiding member, we are waiting for union membership endorsement of union acceptance of the wording of a draft agreement, and then we expect that is likely to go into an arbitration process sometime in the near future.
Thank you. Bettina Gould.
Hello, Bettina Gould, 12 Shoalwater Parkway, Iluka. It's good to see initiatives like the Coast Hazard Risk Management and Adaptation Plan Community Reference Group receiving appropriate advertising. I've seen lots of visible signage in local parks. Given that the AGM is a vital opportunity for residents to engage with local government, I'm inquiring as to why there was minimal advertising for tonight's meeting. For instance, you mentioned there was one social media post on the 19th of December 2024, and the Joondalup voice email that was sent out on the 9th January to subscribers listed all of the 2025 council meeting dates, but made no reference of tonight's AGM.
Thank you, Ms
So I'm
Gould.
wondering if that was a typo.
In answering to your question, I think I read out earlier in the meeting the multiple ways that the city advertised its annual general meeting of electors. If I can pair Joondalup's engagement both in terms of its attendance numbers and numbers of motions for annual general meetings from our larger neighbouring councils, we get far higher levels of attendance than they do. So we're clearly reaching more people than they are, or there's more interest. So yeah, I think it's been well advertised and we've had a high level of engagement. Do you have a second question?
Yeah, the second question was also about appropriate advertising and visible signage. The Valentine's Day concert seems to have been getting lots of attention. Paid social media ads, signage in parks, like huge signage, signage on Hodges Drive near the verge of where you go onto the freeways. So I'm just wondering why there is such disparity in advertising resources between those events and the AGM and what the cost of that might be. I mean, it's a great event.
I'm not asking for further supplementary comments. I guess in the case of the Valentine's Day concert, the council made a decision several years ago that it wished to charge for tickets. So you will have seen since that time that the advertising of it's gone up to a similar level to engage more residents in it. And I'd also make the observation that approximately 8,000 residents of the city of Joondalup a year engage with that, where I think it's highly unlikely that you'd have 8,000 residents looking to engage with an AGM. Thank you. Michelle Kwok.
Good evening. Michelle Kwok, 15 Crabble Ocean Reef. Can the CEO confirm if a petition was received from city staff before Christmas seeking back pay to 1st of July 2022 due to the delayed finalisation of the EBA? And if so, what's the response, please?
Mr. CEO.
Thank you for that question, and through you, presiding member, yes, I can confirm that a petition as you described was received. The question of back pay is one that is currently part of the negotiations, and as I mentioned in my answer to an earlier question, we expect that there will be an arbitration process commencing in the near future, which will include consideration of that issue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Second question.
Thank you.
Yes. Second question?
Yes,
yep.
there
Ms.
is.
Kwok.
It's regarding meeting procedure tonight. In the past, we have asked the mayor to read out, the presiding member to read out the motion. Does the mover has an opportunity to read out the motions tonight, with not including excluding the 2 minutes time?
Given that that's a matter that's been considered by the council and the decision is as it currently stands, so I'm rolling out that, the mover will have the opportunity to read the motion, but it will be part of their time on the motion. Thank you.
Time.
Yes. Thank you, Ms Kwok. Are there any further questions? Please.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors and everyone. A couple of questions. The city is a member of WALGA, and it's also a member of a Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. What other memberships or associations does the city have?
Director Parry, although we might need to take that on notice.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If the question is in relation to what is the City of Joondalup a member of with other organisations, I would need to take that on notice. Thank you.
Thank you. Second question.
Yep. How much are the annual membership fees?
Sorry, Mr Perez. Ms Kwok, please, there's a lot of activity back there and whispering. Can that please not occur? I did read that out in the meeting procedures. Thank you. Mr Perez.
Second question is, how much are the annual membership fees for each one of these organisations?
Director Parry.
Again, thank you through you, Mr Mayor. If we put that list together, we can include the membership fees that are in relation to that.
Thank you, Mr Perez.
Thank you. Can I run a motion to later, please? An extra motion for tonight?
Thank you, Mr Perez. Please. The gentleman there who just sat up, you were looking for a question earlier, please, sir.
Hello, I'm Nicholas Alonso, 3 Selena Court, Duncraig. So I was reading through the annual meeting report, so I'm a little bit slow from when I just got up to the end. And I've seen there is a downward trend in the fire hazard management of the council at the moment. While Perth has some differences to LA, we're seeing winter wildfires, and it's a very similar climate here in Joondalup to that of LA. Are we adequately prepared to handle fires, particularly winter wildfires, if we get that situation here in council?
Director Klassen.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the responsibility of the city is twofold. Firstly, in terms of private property, to ensure adequate fire breaks are in place, and the city's community safety team is responsible for inspecting those fire breaks. In terms of our own property, we provide adequate fire breaks on those properties and maintain this. We've got a program of reducing the fuel load and have in the past some fire or fuel load reduction burning, especially where we have grass trees. In terms of the firefighting capability, that's a requirement on the state government, not a local government requirement. And we are liaising with them through the Local Emergency Management Committee and the District Emergency Management Committee to ensure adequate resources are available.
Thank you.
So the case that was happened in LA was a very wet year before, which caused a lot of growth, and then a very dry winter. Can we very quickly get the ability to remove excess vegetation if needed in that kind of situation?
So the city did some years ago, in fact, I think we might have been one of the first purely metropolitan local governments engaged with DFES and do grass tree burning, predominantly in Warwick bushland. To my observation, that was quite successful when we did have, not a winter fire, because I acknowledge that's what you're asking about, but we had a summer fire breakout in that instance, and we lost very, very little infrastructure. So I personally completely agree, fuel load management is the key. Take the question on board in terms of winter fuel load management, but it's more of a cumulative management, and if winter rains don't come, then there is a risk. But I think the wind situation in Western Australia would make it less likely here for a range of reasons. But yeah, thank you, and it's something we take seriously as a city. Thank you. Gentleman up the back, and then the lady in the row after him. Thank you.
G'day everyone, Brendan, Waverton Court, Callaroo. I've got two questions. First question is, we've noticed a lot of cell towers going up in the area. My question is, has the residents been consulted over it and has safety testing been done?
Thank you. Director Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. The consultation requirements for telecommunication infrastructure does cover a few different tiers of government in terms of obligations. The city's role is typically limited to planning applications, and there are some telecommunication infrastructure that's exempt from requiring a planning approval, so we're not involved in those at all. In terms of the ones where we do receive planning applications for, we do have a planning consultation, local planning policy that guides when and how we undertake consultation, and in that instances, if a telecommunication infrastructure proposal satisfies that criteria, we will undertake consultation with our residents.
Thank you. Second question.
Sorry, you didn't mention the safety testing on that one.
Director Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Safety testing, it's not part of the local government role, but there I am aware there are obligations on the provider to meet certain requirements, but that's a legislative obligation that sits beyond local government.
Thank you. Second question.
Second question is, how much state government funding do you get compared to ratepayers?
Rates are a far larger component of the city's income. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Marietta, I live in Connolly. I just want to find out, we just watched this beautiful video of the Ocean Reef Marina. We cannot go swimming in Mullaloo, so contaminated that water is. It burns my kids' skin, it burns their eyes. We go all the way to Trick now. What is going on there, and are you doing any progress reports on contamination of the beach and the water?
Director Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. The city isn't undertaking specific sampling or testing because that's not the local government's role, but I am aware that relevant state government agencies are undertaking a project where they are testing and analysing the water quality at Mullaloo Beach. I'm not sure how far progressed they are with that report and when it would be available for release. What I can advise, however, though, is in December, Council agreed for the city to increase the frequency of the testing or the sampling that it takes and then passes on to laboratories for the state government to analyse, and that's something that we have been undertaking since Council's decision late last year.
Second question, please. So it's a beautiful starting project. What a mess it's going to be when it's finished. What happens then? What do we do with Mullaloo Beach that is complete unswimmable now at the moment?
Many people are swimming at Mullaloo Beach. I was down there last night. So we will work through that issue, but having just been through the Christmas summer period, there was no shortage of people enjoying Mullaloo Beach, including myself with my children. Thank you. Further question? Mr Sidiris.
Yeah, thank you. Mitch Sedaris, Mullaloo. Further to the response given to the question by Suzanne Apps on the Mullaloo Surf Lifesaving Club and the proposed amendments to that surf club, because it's a capital works program or a pending capital works program, has the city applied to the Minister for Lands for approval or consent to proceed with that particular project?
I think the management order sits with us. Director Klassen.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that with my response, the management order is with the city. Any approvals of a project that is required will be undertaken at the time when the project is to be delivered, And just to confirm, that project is listed for $860,000 in year 2 of the city's 5-year capital works program, being 2025-26.
Thank you, Mr. Sidiris.
It didn't answer the question. Second question, in recent correspondence that I'm aware of, the city's advised the state government that the coastal reserve from Ocean Reef through to Hillary's is a Class C reserve. Can the city provide details and the references associated with that determination and statement by the city?
Director Parry.
Probably.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question. I will need to take that one on notice and get back to you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Please.
Good evening, Jacqueline Hope Belden. When I attended Wanneroo Council recently, people were allowed to speak for 3 minutes and not 2 minutes. This would be to make the council and the public listening be able to hear clearly what's being said and not gabbling. Could that be considered by the council, please?
I mean, the rules are set in the meeting procedures local law, so they're subsidiary legislation. I just have to enforce them. Point 1. Point 2, the council's considered a range of amendments to its meeting procedures local law, because you'll note that the existing one's 2013. However, we haven't progressed those amendments largely because there would be no point. There are standard standing orders about to come in, and so we are awaiting those. And when I say by no point, it is because it is subsidiary legislation. It would need to be approved by the Delegated Legislation Subcommittee of Parliament, and they wouldn't approve an amendment to a local law when that local law would be superseded probably within a few months with standard meeting procedures which are about to arrive. So take the point, but it is all changing and not from the city. Thank you. Further questions? If not, I declare public question time closed and we proceed to public statement time. There's a set of procedures which relates to statements at the AGM. Electors wishing to make a statement will have a maximum of 2 minutes in which to make their statement. Electors will be offered another opportunity to make further statements for up to 2 minutes, following all other electors being provided an opportunity to make statements. There are to be no adverse reflections on elected members or city employees, and should this occur, the statement will be ruled out of order and the elector will be asked to resume their seat. As with public question time, we maintain a register for statement time as well, so I will commence there and then we will proceed from that point. So I'll call forward first Ms Sue North.
Sue North, 47 Parkwood Avenue, Woodvale. Good evening. I'd like to congratulate the City of Joondalup on its achievements in the financial year 2023-24. Reading the annual report, I reflected on how much my life is enhanced by the initiatives, services and facilities that the City provides us with. In addition to those old but essential local government standard offerings of roads and rubbish, whether you enjoy sport, arts and culture or the natural environment, I believe we're extremely fortunate to have access to so many activities and facilities for people of all ages and interests. I, along with thousands of others, regularly appreciate the outstanding facility provided at the Craigie Leisure Centre. I'm looking forward to the new offering at the Ocean Reef Marina, and I couldn't do without the amazing programs and materials provided by our libraries. I enjoy the excellently maintained green spaces around my home every day, and I appreciate being part of a community that I can participate in and contribute to. I was particularly pleased to see the awards made to the Craigie Leisure Centre and Joondalup Festival. They're both outstanding examples of their kind, and I congratulate the City. All of this and so much more has been done with ongoing responsible budgeting, so important if we're to maintain access to the natural environment and the services we currently enjoy. There have been and will continue to be challenges and questions. There will be things that many of us would have liked to have been different. but I think we're extremely fortunate to live in the City of Joondalup, where we enjoy a local government that is professional, caring and committed. I'd like to congratulate the City again on its achievements and thank you both to the administration and all of the officers and to elected members for your efforts.
Thank you, Ms North. Mrs Dominique Mimigal?
Dominique Memno in Heathridge. I've come to support the Port Hedland motion that we'll be hearing about in a bit later. Over the last 4 years, I've been very active and I've lived and breathed COVID-19 and COVID-19 injections. I was one of those that chose not to get the jab. My husband took 2, my daughter took 2, against my wishes, but that was their choice. I have seen and heard so many things that I don't think we have to listen or hear the science anymore. We only have to speak to one another. I lost a dear friend. She died in her sleep at 52. She had no symptoms whatsoever. She just didn't wake up one day. My uncle had a stroke after having 2 injections. My husband had a lower blood clot in his lower leg. He's 46 years old. My father just collapsed and lost the use of his legs for a week. He had MRI scans, he had this scan, that scan. No one could tell him why he lost the use of his legs. My 21-year-old daughter was taken to emergency 3 times. She had temperatures over 40, she had swellings in her legs, and no one could tell me what was wrong with her. Now, having heard all these stories, I had a good feeling that it was the injection. I knew what she needed to have because I'd researched it. I'd followed doctors like Dr. Peter McCullough, and there was protocols for detoxing. I put her on these protocols. Her inflammatory markers come down from 77 to 20, and then they come down further. She's now better.
Thank you. Thank you for your statement.
Thank you.
Mrs Ileana Anthony.
Good evening all. Liana Anthony, Marker Road, Ocean Reef. The last few years have been strange and a struggle, mentally and physically for many. Every day we're hearing friends and stories from those who have passed and others living and struggling with their injuries and from the COVID injections, many scared and angry. Experts worldwide are reporting deaths and injuries from the trial injection fact. In my extended family, we have had 2 deaths and 9 injuries. My close friend Peter, who cannot be here tonight, this is her story. Prior to 2021, I was a very active, healthy and involved 66-year-old family business owner. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I delayed taking the COVID injection as long as I could. I had a business to run. After taking all 3 injections, my health went haywire. Painful aches in my shoulder, back, arms and hands. My blood pressure went from 180 to 200 regularly. Spikes in adrenaline, shortness of breath with chest pains and unable to walk any distance. Presenting an emergency, I was admitted immediately. They monitored everything, my heart, my chest, my shoulders, taken bloods, finding nothing, and I was discharged. Subsequently, I was prescribed a depression and blood pressure meds going from 1 to 8 a day and referred to a psychologist. I finally referred to a cardiologist who found 90% blockage in an artery of my heart and 2 stents were inserted. Still no medical doctor would consider possibilities of vax injured. After 9 months with the help of 2 GPs, I was helped back to better health. Both GPs agreed that I was vax injured. I have 2 nephews and a niece with myocarditis and heart issue, all in their 40s and previously extremely fit. My brother had a vaccination on the Monday, caught a flight on the Tuesday and dropped dead walking off the plane. No rare side effects at all. Recent studies show the percentage of public trust in government and our health industry is the lowest it's ever been. The divide will stop when acknowledgement and trust is rebuilt. The time is now.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to make a statement? Back corner, please, sir.
Brendan Cook, again, Waverton Court. Today I address a decision that left our community dismayed to denial of Rebecca Pizzi's motion in the last council meeting. This decision alone, with excuses given, has raised serious concerns for all of us. The Joondalup Council claims it avoids involvement in state politics, but where was the separation during the COVID-19 lockdowns? Councils across WA worked hand in hand with the state government enforcing measures that introduced into our lives and violated basic human rights. Your actions prove that there was no separation between the council and the state. Now I'll challenge you to reconsider the measures enforced during the lockdowns, ignored our right to free will. They imposed draconian mandates and violated human rights and the Geneva Convention. You argue this motion is too political, but this isn't about politics, it's about integrity. What will history say about you if you stood by while experimental drugs caused injuries and deaths in your own community? Young men and women are suffering conditions like myocarditis, pericarditis, while others face long-term health issues. You were elected by the people to serve the people, yet today it feels like you serve only those who line your pockets.
I'm sorry, that's not appropriate. Please sit down. I've read that twice in the rules. Please sit down.
How much money did you get from
I'm
state
ruling
government?
this out of order. Please sit down. Thank you. Are there any further statements? If not, I declare public statement time closed. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I've declared it closed. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I didn't see.
The gentleman to your left saw.
But I had already declared it closed.
The other gentleman.
Please, sir. I know, but I had already declared it closed.
I had my hand up, sir.
I
did have my hand up. The gentleman saw it.
I will allow you a statement.
Thank you.
And then it is closed. Thank you. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Sir.
First of all, I think what the city are doing is a great job. We live in one of the best places in the world. The gentleman that just had to go and sit down here made a statement that reflects just about what I think everybody in this room is thinking, and it's been on their mind for 5 years. What this lady has gone through here is what many of us have gone through. I've sat in these meetings before, and I've listened to the conversations from all of you. All I get is it's not in our remit. It's not in our remit. We have a close to 20% excess deaths in Australia. Excess deaths around the world are skyrocketing. There's a new sheriff in town. You lot need to wake up. Thank you.
Excuse me. Now I'll read out the rules again. Two in particular. There are to be no adverse reflections on elected members or city employees. And should this occur, the question or statement will be ruled out of order and the elector will be asked to resume their seat. That will also apply for statements made during motions, plain and simple. Secondly, at the start of the meeting, I made the point, and I'll find the appropriate one here, that I requested, I'll find the one from my, under the local law, a person must not create a disturbance by interrupting or interfering with orderly conduct of proceedings. This includes expressing approval or dissent by conversing or by any other means. Now, with respect, some of you hold very strong views on issues in one direction, but I'm aware that other people in the gallery hold opposite strong views. That is democracy. That's a good thing. But that's why applause and cheering alienates a number of your colleagues at the same time. That is simply not the kind of meeting that I'm going to run. So I'll be very clear about that. Any more of that, and the person will just simply be asked to seat. And I have a range of triggers which I can pull in terms of managing the meeting if there is clapping and cheering, because I've seen the motions, and for many of you I've engaged with you in other ways. I know the variety of views that are in this room, and they will all be respected. Yours will be respected, but you must also respect theirs. So, next order of business is motions from electors. We did have a register of people who wished to raise motions, and when called to the lectern, I'll ask that you please state your name and full address for the public record. So we proceed to the motions, and I call forward for our first motion, Ms. Beth Hewitt.
Beth Hewitt of Edgewater. The reason for this motion is that foxes are everywhere in Yellowgonga Park and are wreaking havoc on the wildlife there. Many of our members are volunteers with Friends of Yellowgonga, and we all know the work they do in restoring habitat and protecting the turtles. Yet all this is being undone by allowing the feral foxes to continue to exist and to destroy the native wildlife. This spring, as the females came out of the lake to lay their eggs, many were predated on by the foxes. There was one or more instances of large 20-plus-year-old turtles killed before they even finished laying their eggs. The foxes also dig up the nests and feast on the eggs. They do not belong in the park. We need your action to ensure they are removed. The foxes are also often seen in the suburbs, particularly when they've used up the resources of the lake. They are presently predating on joeys and injuring their mothers in the process. By working with the department and the City of Wanneroo, the problem can be dealt with holistically, humanely and hopefully permanently. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Hewitt. I forgot to ask, I see Mr George Hewitt had his name down as seconder. Are you happy to just raise your hand as seconder, sir? Did you wish to speak? Does anyone wish to speak against the motion? If not, I will put that motion by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Mr Tosterman.
John Tosterman, 37 Lakeview Drive, Edgewater. Thank you, Mr Mayor, and good evening, Joondalup staff and councillors. Lakeview Contemplation Garden planted its first vegetation in July last year. Since then, the plants have grown many times their original tube stock size. Losses have been kept to below 5%, which I consider encouraging, given the challenging growing conditions there. Passing pedestrian traffic has been full of praise for our achievements. Unfortunately, water for the garden is via two 1,000 litre tanks and is therefore gravity fed and has low pressure. Watering takes 3 to 4 hours depending on the dryness of the soil. In summer heat waves when water is most needed, it is unlikely that 3 to 4 hours can be found at a time of the day when the temperature is not unbearably hot. Yesterday I watered from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. and was close to collapsing due to the heat. If we had access to the mains water supply, the increased pressure would be such that watering times would be reduced to a more tolerable level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Tosterman. I assume, Ms Hewitt, you're still happy to be seconder? Did you wish to speak as seconder? Thank you.
I just wanted to add that we don't intend that if we do get this water on from mains pressure, that we'll be using large volumes or any extra. We actually want to train the plants to be self-sufficient and hopefully in a few years not need any water. But just these few years of establishing the garden, having water would make it possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? If not, no, I don't take amendments in AGMs. It's not fair to the person who put the motion forward. If anyone doesn't wish to speak against, I will put that motion by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. Our next notice of motion is number 3, Ms Kwok. I'll just look to Bettina Gould. Are you still happy to second by a show of hands? Yep. Thank you, Ms Kwok. Sorry, I should have done it for the first 2 motions, although I saw the mover and seconder walk forward. I will look for a show of hands from the seconder. And if the seconder isn't present, which may be the case, I'll look for a physical seconder, I think, in a meeting. It's just tidier. But Ms Kwok.
Michelle Kwok, Craft Oval, Ocean Reef. It is concerning that a petition has been lodged by staff to CEO seeking back pay of 8% and 4% for the applicable 3-year period since 1st of July 2022 under the ongoing delayed enterprise bargaining agreement negotiations. Such a substantial financial obligation amounting to millions of dollars raises serious questions about the city's budgeting process and the potential impact on rate charges for residents. Further, the delay may negatively affecting the city staff ability to deliver services to residents. 219 staff has left since, with increase in staff turnover, high reliance on temporary staff and recruitment costs, all of which may strain the city's resources. Additionally, staff morale is not likely to be adversely affected, particularly when key management personnel, CEO and directors have already received a combined average of 9% pay increase without any delays, as evident in the annual financial statement. It is critical that the EBA negotiation is finalized promptly. All new EBA should have been signed off before the start of the applicable agreement period. To ensure transparency and financial accountability, the Council must ratify all future EBAs and receive a detailed report on the financial impact of the proposed final agreement. This report should address back pay, including provisions for employees who have since left the city. The staff are the backbone of the city's operations and deserve to be valued and supported. Delayed negotiations undermine their contributions and confidence in the city's leadership. We urge the CEO to prioritize this matter and conclude the EBA negotiations before end of the financial year to prevent further disruption and ensure financial stability for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kwok. Ms. Gould.
Thank you. I second this motion because I appreciate the hard work of the staff of the City of Joondalup also. Timely resolution of the EBA is not just a matter of fairness to staff who are vital to delivering services to residents. It's also a question of leadership accountability. Staff morale and retention directly influence the quality of services provided to our community. Prolonged uncertainty in negotiations, particularly when senior executives have already received their substantial pay increases, sends a troubling message to employees and ratepayers alike. Additionally, transparency and due diligence are paramount, ensuring the Council ratifies all future EBAs and receives comprehensive reports on financial impacts will enhance accountability and prevent similar delays in the future. The City must adopt a proactive approach and structured approach to EBA negotiations to protect its financial stability and maintain its reputation as a fair and responsible employer. This motion is essential to restore confidence in the City's governance and to ensure that its operations remain efficient, transparent and equitable for all stakeholders. I urge the Council to look at this as a matter of urgency and resolve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gould. Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? Please, Ms. North.
As someone who's worked in local government and worked under an EBA and also as a manager working with a team seeking an EBA, I think this motion is a mistake. I don't think it's something that us as ratepayers, when we're not aware of all of the issues involved, should be concerned about. I think it is something that we have to leave to administration to work through. They're enormously complex. There are often a lot of issues that have to be considered. It isn't just salary, it's often terms and conditions as well. And I just think that it's something that we shouldn't be involved in when we can't be involved and can't be across all of the issues involved.
Thank you. Do I have any speakers for the motion? Please, Mr. Sideris.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Sideris Mullu. I wouldn't normally get involved in EBA discussions, but I find it extraordinary. From my understanding, it's a 3-year EBA period, and this is year 2 of that 3-year period. It only if the city takes with the city administration, and I assume it's the CEO and some of his senior team, if that takes them another less than 6 months, by the time that EBA is signed off, you're already in the process of negotiating the next one. I strongly support the motion. I find it, if any action contrary to the intent of that motion and not finalising an EBA in a timely manner only reflects poorly on the performance of this city. In its entirety, that's the CEO, the administration, and the elected members.
Thank you, Mr. Sidiris. Further speakers for the motion? Ms. Kwok, do you wish to close?
Thank you for the comments. Basically, this EBA negotiation should have been finalised before it signed off. That should have been happened on the 1st of July 2022. It has not been signed off. Yes, it is under CEO and operations and we shouldn't be interfering, but it is affecting the city's budgeting process and it's impacting on our rate charges. I think we have we should be concerned about that, and all we're doing is to urge the CEO to promptly conclude this.
Thank you. I'll put that motion and by show of hands ask you to cast your vote. Those in favour? Those against? Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Notice of motion number 4, Jacqueline Hope. I'll just look for a show of hands from Ms. Kwok. You seconding? Yes, Ms. Hope.
Good evening, Jacqueline Hope Belden. The Forest of the Fallen is a deeply meaningful memorial display created to honour Australians who have courageously shared their personal stories of loss and adversity following the COVID-19 pandemic and vaccination protocols. It offers a space of reflection, remembrance and understanding, allowing their voices to be heard in a non-judgmental and compassionate way. Each story, accompanied by a photograph, tells the journey of an individual who has either passed away or suffered significant health impacts. These stories reveal experiences of grief, struggle and resilience, highlighting risks that many were not made aware of. For those who feel isolated in their suffering, the display provides a powerful sense of community and validation, reminding them they are not alone. Many individuals have shared that they are unable to speak openly about their experiences, often facing skepticism or fear of judgment. Some have been told by medical professions that their injuries are unrelated to vaccines, and many healthcare providers feel constrained by external pressures not to discuss vaccine-related injuries openly. This display provides a respectful and supportive platform for these stories, ensuring they are seen, heard, and acknowledged. Importantly, it also offers follow-up information and resources for those seeking further support. It is essential to note that it is not a marketing or advertising campaign. The Forest of the Fallen exists solely as a memorial, a heartfelt acknowledgement of the lives impacted, and a reminder of the courage it takes to navigate these challenges. Please support this motion.
Thank you. Ms. Kwok.
Michelle Kwok, Ocean Reef. In 2022, residents sought permission from the city to host the Forest of the Fallen display at New Hawkins Park. They were advised to apply for a temporary memorial permit for public reserves, but the application was unsuccessful as the display did not meet the specific criteria. I subsequently reached out to the city's community venues team to explore hiring a park for this purpose. While the team was open to receiving a written request, there is concern that this process could lead to rejection once again. By bringing this forward as a motion to council, we seek to provide additional context and emphasize the importance of granting this proposal the consideration it deserves. The display consists of around 300 individual stories, with 50 of these representing Western Australians. It requires a modest space of 50 to 60 square meters and will be respectfully monitored by a volunteer to ensure its integrity. Public interaction is entirely optional, with visitors free to engage with the stories at their own pace without facilitation or disruption. We are requesting permission to host this display for 5 hours on one weekend day per month at the listed parks, though we are open to considering alternative venues if deemed more suitable. This display is more than just a collection of stories. It is a memorial to lives touched by adversity, a history lesson of resilience, and a powerful act of compassion. It provides space for reflection, prayer, and connection, allowing the public to witness and honor the experiences of those who have endured great challenges. Through this initiative, we hope to foster greater awareness, understanding, and support within the community, offering solace to those affected and ensuring their voices are treated with the respect and dignity they deserve. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any speakers against the motion? If not, I'll put the motion by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Notice of motion number 5, Ms Apps. And Ms Hewitt, happy to second. Thank you.
Good evening, Suzanne. The motion is that Ranger and Community Safety Services are reinstated to assist, manage and attend in person to native wildlife incidents and injuries, specifically relating to kangaroos. The DBCA have informed the community the responsibility for the care of native wildlife falls to the authority of whose land the animals found on. The City of Joondalup have in the past number of years declined to provide assistance, saying it's not their responsibility and direct all inquiries to Wildcare. This is a volunteer organisation who only operate during business hours if they have volunteers and will only refer the inquiry onto a local volunteer or shooter if one can be found. Most injuries occur after hours between dusk and dawn. The last resort is often calling the police, who will only attend if the animal is creating a hazard, but really, should precious police resources be left to deal with these incidences when the animal is on the City of Joondalup land? This whole process of leaving the responsibility to the local ratepayer and residents to manage an injured, in many cases a dangerous kangaroo, is unsafe, disturbing and harrowing for the resident and is an inhumane way to treat the native wildlife. Which is strange, as the kangaroo is often featured as a draw card to visit Yallawonga Regional Park. The City of Joondalup had for many years provided in-person support 24/7 to residents and ratepayers to manage injured wildlife in a humane process. This was stopped. Don't know how, don't know when. I do not believe this was ever decided by council vote, but was decided by the administration. I ask the community to support the motion and look forward to the council voting on reinstatement of this service.
Thank you. Ms Hewitt.
Yes, thank you. Imagine if you didn't know that the city had changed its responsibility to look after native animals on its property. You go for a walk in the local park and you find an injured kangaroo. Perhaps a fox had attacked it. The poor animal is frightened and in pain. You want to do the right thing, so you call the rangers at the city. But no, there aren't any rangers of the type there used to be, people with the skills and qualifications to deal with the injured animals. They point you at the department, who points you at the volunteers, who are so busy working these days that nobody has time to hang near the phone to take your call. So eventually you end up calling the police. It's a hall of mirrors with each pointing towards another and not taking responsibility. It's not good enough. The city needs to have suitably qualified, experienced and equipped rangers to attend to these issues, whether it's an injured kangaroo or a vicious dog. The community expects this. This is what we pay our rates for and what we believe is your responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? If not, I'll put that motion by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Motion number 6, Ms Gould. Ms Kwok, are you happy to second? Thank you, Ms Gould.
Okay, so you'd like me to read this out as well? Yeah, that the electors of the City of Joondalup request that Council instructs the CEO to publish submissions received during community consultations verbatim, ensuring they are presented in a clear, accessible and unaltered format, including all references and hyperlink addresses as plain text. So my supporting statement is transparency and access to information are cornerstones of meaningful community engagement. When residents take the time to provide submissions during community consultations, they often include carefully researched references and hyperlink addresses to support their arguments. These references enhance the depth and credibility of their contributions, offering valuable context and insight into community perspectives. Removing or altering these references diminishes the quality and transparency of the consultation process and could even be perceived as a form of censorship, undermining public confidence in the Council's commitment to open dialogue. Online safety risks and potential for broken or malicious links, which the Council seem to be concerned about, are valid. However, these risks are effectively managed without removing references entirely. A practical and balanced solution is to publish hyperlink addresses in plain text rather than clickable links. This approach ensures that the information remains available and accessible for residents who wish to copy and paste the references, while eliminating any risk of accidental exposure to any harmful content or links. By ensuring that submissions are published verbatim and unaltered, all members of the community, whether they are providing submissions or reviewing them, are given full access to the same information, and this creates a level playing field where all voices can be heard and considered equally with no risk of information being edited or selectively excluded. Additionally, it allows residents to see exactly how their input is presented and ensures that the consultation process remains transparent and inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms Kwok, a seconder. Any speakers against the motion? I'll put that motion then by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Notice of motion number 7, Mr Copeland. Did I get that? Or E. Copeland, might be Mrs. My apologies. My apologies. And seconder, L. Thomas. Thank you. Ms Copeland.
Thank you. I'm Emma Copeland of 22 Ensign Way, Belden. The 2024 Australian Local Government Climate Review, released last August, states that council operational emissions make up 1.5% of Australia's total output. Therefore, however, most councils in the review do not monitor their emission reduction projects. As such, I put the motion to the council as real progress on reducing emissions can only happen if each area has a clear target. Monitoring is essential to measure reduction progress against a verified baseline to assess success and improve outcomes. It enables the city to see where it can replicate projects in other areas. Emissions targets should be detailed in the city's annual report, followed by emissions progress in meeting each target. The residents of the city have a right to know how their local government is managing emissions reductions, particularly as they pay for rates for services. Scope 1 emissions refer to carbon released from sources the city owns or controls directly. For example, buildings, transport, waste management. Scope 2 emissions are indirect, coming from the city's purchase of electricity, for example. Scope 3 emissions can be bigger than both Scope 1 and 2 combined, as they are life cycle emissions arising from upstream, where emissions are derived from activities outside the direct control of the city, such as employees commuting leased assets, and downstream, where emissions are released from use or disposal of the city's products or services. My last point mentions penalties for not meeting reduction targets. These could be in the form of fines. However, more effective is the penalty of receiving greater scrutiny on how the entity is operating to reduce emissions. For instance, the entity produces a detailed plan on how it will meet emissions targets.
Thank you, Ms. Copeland. As seconder, Ms Thomas, do you wish to speak? Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? Thank you. Lady up here first. Thank you.
My name is Teresa Fairley. I live at 12 Deverell Square, Hillary's. I would just like to say when I went to school and we learnt biology, carbon dioxide was not known as a poison. It's actually known as something we need more of, not less of. And I find that these sorts of things about the draft climate change have been proven to be incorrect and a big hoax. You can see people like Professor Plimmer and scientists like Joanna Nova who can inform you on a proper scientific basis as to why we should not reduce carbon dioxide, and that all this expense going to electric vehicles, which need carbon to make the electricity to charge them, is all a waste of money and time of people. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have another speaker for the motion? Please, sir.
Unfortunately, people who think that climate change is a hoax have been misinformed or disinformed. Joanne Nova is, for example, a biologist and not an expert in climate change. CO2 is required, but we need to get it down below where it was before human industrialization caused it to rapidly climb. I could go in massive detail, and maybe I'll talk to the woman later about it. But yeah, the scientific information is very clear on that climate change is real and happening.
Thank you. Sorry, I know I had it earlier, but if you could just give us your name and street.
Nicholas Delonzo, Duncraig.
Thank you. Street, if possible. We don't generally. Yeah, that's fine. We've got it earlier. Ms. Kwok, did you have your hand up against? Oh no, behind you. My apologies. No. I just saw another speaker against. Please. Thank you.
Good evening, Linda Crawford, Goron Road, Duncraig. I also have concerns regarding the health of our planet. However, I have strong concerns that net zero is neither justified nor practical. Many fear it will cause economic ruin and environmental disaster. A coalition of over 1,600 scientists from around the world have signed a declaration stating there is no climate emergency, and they strongly oppose the harmful and unrealistic net zero CO2 policy being pushed around the globe. Professor William Happer states more CO2 is good for the world, not bad for the world. He also stated that the direct warming by CO2 is less than 1 degree, 0.7 degrees, and, quote, a 0.71 degrees Celsius is not enough to justify a climate emergency. Of further concern, though, is that some of the green renewables are proving to be not so green, but rather damaging to the environment and the ecosystems. Wind turbines, large solar farms and electric vehicles are all becoming controversial. Toxic waste products, the deleterious effect of infrasound on human health and loss of wildlife and sea life, and fires, just to mention a few. This week, Senator Rennick drew attention to the fact that lithium-ion batteries caused 183 fires across Queensland this year, an increase from previous years. The toxic emissions from these fires may have devastating consequences on the environment and health. The rollout of renewables means the rollout of smart technology and ever-increasing EMF, which many have health concerns around. The Environmental Health Trust states massive increases in 5G equipment equals massive increases in energy use, so this also looks to be counterproductive. Senator Roberts points out further irony. China uses our coal to manufacture wind turbines and solar panels, and then our government buys these finished products back from them, and to add insult to injury, we even subsidise them to install them. I believe a precautionary approach is best. I'm not convinced that the current climate science of CO2 and climate catastrophe is accurate. Therefore, I cannot in good conscience endorse any of these so-called green renewables. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have another speaker for the motion? As mover, Ms. Copeland, did you wish to close? You have a right of reply, if you wish.
Thank you for the right of reply. I am not going to engage in a debate on whether the climate crisis is real. There is an enormous amount of information that is available for people who are willing to look for it. It's around us. We can see it in our daily lives. We are on, I think, day 4 of a heat wave. We have another 2, possibly even 3 days of temperatures at least 35 degrees or more. I am not going to engage in a debate on this, but I do believe that the city has a responsibility to set an example, to provide measurable emissions targets so that we can monitor the carbon produced and mitigate and therefore reduce our impact on our planet. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put that motion by a show of hands, those in favour. And those against? I will call it for the motion is not carried. Thank you. Notice of motion number 8, D. Campton. Thank you. And I have M. Campton seconding. Thank you, Ms. Campton. Just get name and suburb if I can, please. Thanks.
Dawn Campton, Duffy Terrace, Woodvale. In my motion, I request that dogs are prohibited from Duffy House area, along with quad and dirt bikes, electric scooters and similar. The City of Joondalup upgraded the existing driveway and installed new fencing and pathways to the Duffy House area. This has created an inherent problem, allowing access to dogs, vehicles and similar. The problem is difficult to manage with little or no passive surveillance. Kangaroos who have been chased by dogs, dirt bikes or similar, are known to develop myopathy. This is a stress-related condition leading to a slow and painful death. All wildlife are adversely affected. There have been recent reported sightings of dirt bikes tearing through the paddocks next to Duffy House and a father and son on a quad bike riding through the Duffy House area. The City of Joondalup Rangers did not attend and the police were unable to do anything. Action could be taken by both the police and rangers if signage was erected prohibiting access to dogs, quad and dirt bikes and electric scooters. Yalonga is more than a regional park. It is a native sanctuary. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Campton, do you wish to speak as well, please? Thank you.
Michael Campton, same address. One extra point to the wife's motion is that I've noticed with the new path that has been put through in the development, it sits about 2.5 inches, I'm sorry, I only know inches, don't know centimetres, 2.5 inches above the ground. It's a safety hazard and the council, if people riding their bikes, I've seen people trip over it already, and if people riding their bikes or whatever in the park either run into a roo or try to escape a roo that's jumping around, they could end up injured and the council could be sued in today's environment. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Campton. Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? If not, I'll put that motion by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Notice of motion number 9, Mr. Moore. And Mr. Dickey, if you're just happy to waive as seconder. Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Mike Moore, 31 Quarry Ramble in Edgewater. Look, I apologise, I'm having trouble speaking at the moment. The proposal is pretty straightforward. Most of you are horrified at what was proposed down at Warwick Quarter. What's possible adjacent to the Edgewater train station is potentially even worse. It was a mistake in the DHCP and it needs to be remedied. Sorry.
Take your time, Mr. Moore. Understand. Yeah. I know it's, yeah.
Sorry about that. There's no height limit. So you can get 25, 30 stories. There's no amenity there, there's no shops, absolutely nothing. It could be a planning and a social disaster. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Dickey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Martin Dickey, 6 Ferndean Mews, Hillary's. I can speak to you as somebody who's worked with the document, the Activity Centre Plan, or rather the previous document to it. And certainly it's altogether obvious and altogether appropriate that we have no limit on what can be built in the city centre. But that part of what's called Joondalup Edge is really a tail that stretches down between the freeway and Joondalup Drive. It's the tail on the peanut. And really to have city centre standards applied to that section of development, which is remote from the city centre and the amenities of the city, is just not appropriate. It's not in accordance with orderly and proper planning. So I urge you to support this measure.
Thank you, Mr. Dickey, and my thanks to Mr. Moore as well. Are there any speakers against the motion? If not, I'll put that motion by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Notice of motion number 10, L. Thomas. Thank you. And Ms. Copeland, are you happy to second? If you just wave, thank you.
Hello, my name is Lynn Thomas and I live at 49 Tiller Road, Ocean Reef. I believe the motion to request a comprehensive audit of carbon emissions will provide accurate data and a clear baseline for forward measurements of the city's carbon emissions, which I believe will provide practical help in clarifying the city's future mitigation strategy, and I believe will add a level of transparency to the city's climate strategy, as well as great efficiencies. We all seek the reassurance of accurate data in our daily lives. We might ask to see utility bills of a new house we're planning to purchase. I request that an appropriate time for the audit would be around 6 to 12 months, which would ensure that the climate policy, already delayed, could be presented in the new data for the new climate policy for the beginning of the year 2026. With regard to 2, citing that the audit include the city's share of the CO2 emissions emanating from the Joondalup Park waste management facility, which I understand provides a degree of complexity, I believe that this audit will provide an opportunity of joint planning with the other stakeholders, and I believe the audit will provide an opportunity for a comprehensive understanding of all the relevant sources of the emissions, which I believe would provide a pathway to mitigation strategies for the emissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Copeland, as seconder, do you wish to speak?
Thank you. Emma Copeland, 22 Ensign Way, Belden. I second motion 10. I believe that effective monitoring of emissions requires a point against which to measure progress on achieving targets. That's the reason why I support an audit of emissions. If, for instance, we have an audit of emissions for Joondalup Park, we have a baseline for measuring the success of, for example, the city's pending FOGO, the Food Organics, Garden Organics rollout. The WA government target is for all local governments to have FOGO services available in 2025. As of August 2024, 22 local governments had done so, 10 had not. As a way of reducing emissions, FOGO is a popular choice for local governments, particularly as it generates income. This is just an example of why I believe the city should introduce an audit for emissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? Please.
I just feel money would be better spent on actually recycling and actually knowing where the recycling is actually going, because I've heard rumours that the recycling doesn't actually get recycled, it actually just goes to waste. So I'd prefer money spent in the recycling area than this, just monitoring emissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a further speaker for the motion? Ms Copeland Ms Thomas, as mover, did you wish to, you have the right of reply, did you wish to close debate? Thank you. I'll put that motion then by show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? I think I'll call it on the hands again and say that that motion is not carried. Notice of motion number 11, M. Dowling. And as seconder, Ms Copeland, if you give us a quick wave, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor. I'm Michael Dowling. I'm from 16 Ellis Grove, Woodvale. I would like I'll read it properly actually. We, the electors of the City of Joondalup, request the Council instructs the City that it formally declares a climate emergency to provide overarching direction to the City across all areas of the draft climate plan, Change Plan 2024 to 2034 for the City to meet its obligations by 1, declaring a climate emergency, acknowledging the urgent need to address the climate crisis and its local impacts. 2, committing to developing and implementing a comprehensive climate action plan that A, sets a clear timeline and measurable targets for achieving net zero emissions across the city's operations and community by 2034. B, prioritises a just and equitable transition away from fossil fuel use and investments, ensuring that vulnerable groups are supported in the transition. C, actively seeks to invest in renewable energy, sustainable infrastructure and programs that enhance community resilience. Requesting a detailed report from the City Administration within 6 months outlining a specific strategies, funding opportunities and partnerships to achieve those objectives. And 4, the declaration will provide a framework for meaningful, measurable climate action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Dowling. Ms Copeland, as seconder, do you wish to speak? Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? The lady up the back, I think, yep, and then we'll see.
Teresa Fairley, 12 Deverell Square, Hillaries. I'd just like to say there is no climate emergency and that this week it's hot because it's summer and that I have lived here for 45 years and we get hot in summer and cool in winter. We have dry seasons and we have wet seasons. The amount of carbon dioxide in the air is 0.4%. We do not have a carbon dioxide emergency. As far as renewable energies are concerned, is anyone concerned about the wildlife that's getting chopped up by these wind turbines that are all over the country? In Tasmania, all the eagles are getting chopped up. The birds are having their migrations affected. The whales are beaching because of these stupid wind turbines that are everywhere at the moment. Do you know it takes 220,000 tonnes of coal to build one wind turbine? And they are not recyclable, they're inefficient, they don't work all the time, and that is just one example of renewables that are a waste of money, and that money can be spent in much better areas. And let's look after our wildlife and stop the destruction and the ecology that has been vandalised by these renewable energy items. Thank you.
Sorry, pushed the wrong button. Thank you, Ms Fairley. Does anybody wish to speak for the motion? Thank you, sir.
I'll try to avoid getting into an argument.
Just name again if I can, please.
Nicholas Alonso. I'll try to avoid getting into an argument, but it is a bit tough for me to avoid that. The nature of climate change is that it can be sometimes difficult to understand how so little carbon dioxide can have such a big impact. We've seen from, as it was mentioned before, William Happer, who is a laser physicist. His numbers are actually come pretty much similar to what is expected for climate scientists, and that comes around the same number. It's just that his numbers do not factor in the feedback loops that are implicated by climate change when doing that understanding. As far as declaring a climate emergency, it shows that you're serious about tackling what is probably the biggest challenge of our time. The speaker before me does not have an accurate number that she was using. That's not the actual number. There are also many methods we can use to prevent the small number of bird strikes that do occur from wind turbines. There's no indication of any impacts, but negative impacts on whales at all. There's been, I could link several studies on that, but yeah, I should try to avoid arguing on that factor. But yeah, climate change is very real. Many reputable scientists, you can go to that information, that show exactly what is expected and even what's expected to happen in West Australia specifically around increased temperatures and drying summers.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak against the motion? Ms. Gould had her hand up earlier. Thank you.
Okay, I respectfully urge the Council to hold off on any further decisions regarding a commitment to any of the net zero emissions in light of several current factors. Recently, we've seen major developments in global climate policy, particularly with the United States' withdrawal from the Paris Agreement. This decision, alongside similar moves by other countries, signals a shift in the global approach to climate action, with an increasing number of nations reconsidering aggressive climate targets due to the economic and practical implications. As we approach a federal and state election this year, it's crucial that the Council remains cautious and considers the broader political landscape before committing to any further climate action that may not align with upcoming policy changes. I encourage the Council to focus more on local and achievable environmental actions. I too love the planet and can have an immediate effect and tangible impact for our community without necessitating significant financial outlays for carbon offsets. There are so many more practical actions, such as planting more trees to combat urban heat, more effective waste management systems, recycling, monitoring and reducing microplastics. There is just so much that we can do that is meaningful contributions to our environment. These measures not only improve our local environment, but they're also much more feasible in the short term without the need for additional expenditures on carbon offsets or large-scale emission reductions. So let's focus on what we can control at a local level, supporting initiatives that contribute to a sustainable and healthier environment while maintaining a mindful and broader economic approach to the landscape, what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have another speaker for the motion? If not, Mr. Dowling, as mover, did you wish to close debate? Thank you.
I'm intrigued by the people who think that not doing anything towards the climate emergency will actually help them in some way. We have a cost of living crisis at the moment. Do you know how much your insurance bill is going to go up because of what's happened in America? Do you know how much your insurance policy went up because of the fires in the East a few years ago? Do you realise that all of those costs will continue to rise year on year until we manage the carbon output? Before we vote on this critical motion, I urge you to reflect on the stake what's at stake for the Joondalup and its future. Declaring a climate emergency is not just about acknowledging the crisis we face, it's about taking responsibility, stepping up as leaders in our community. The science is clear. As we see in IPC report after IPC report, thousands of actual scientists, not those who pull the figures out of the air, are here. We are in a race against time to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. The impacts of climate crisis are already evident here in Western Australia. Extreme heat, more intense storms, intense bushfires, loss of plant and animal species, the coastal erosion are threatening our homes, our economy and the natural environment. These are not distant problems. They are happening right now in our backyard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dowling. I'll put that motion by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? I will call that one on the hands, I think. Thank you. I declare that lost. Thank you. The motion was not carried. Ms. Hewitt.
Beth Hewitt, still in Edgewater.
Sorry, thank you, George. Oh, Mr. Hewitt.
ECRA has been asking for a tree protection policy since its inception. That's ECRA's inception. And we are heartened to see that Walga is slowly moving in this direction. The impact of increased density, climate changes, droughts, and simply misunderstanding of the role of trees in our lives and the health of trees leads people to think the only solution is to get rid of the tree. A tree protection policy will ensure that only those trees that really must go are allowed to go. By creating a program of inspection of private trees, we can ensure only that diseased and damaged trees are removed or trimmed, and that healthy trees are maintained for our future. We would hope that the city works quickly to develop and instigate a tree protection policy, and that homeowners and developers see the advantage of creating a cooler environment, a more enjoyable environment, a more beautiful environment through the shade provided by our trees beyond the street verge.
Thank you, Ms. Hewitt. Mr. Hewitt, do you wish to speak as seconder? Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? I'll put that motion then by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Declare that motion carried. Thank you. Next motion, Mr. Tostovan. And Ms. Hewitt, thank you. As seconder, Mr. Tostovan.
Still John Tostovan, 37 Lakeview Drive, Edgewater. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to the bird bath for Lakeview Contemplation Garden, many of our planted trees and shrubs at Lakeview Contemplation Garden are foraging material for honeyeaters, cockatoos and other sort of birds. These birds require water for drinking, bathing and cooling off. Watching these activities is an added attraction for visitors. Number 2, the games table. Many limestone rocks have been dug up in the course of developing the site. A potential use of these rocks is to make a Gabion-style structures for a small table and chairs incorporating a chessboard. There is a lovely shady area at the bottom of the garden which would suit such a facility. This would expand the use of the garden as a social amenity. Rubbish bins. Human nature being what it is not uncommon for people to discard refuse where they are rather than carry it home if there is no convenient disposal facility nearby. Refuse bin and dog poo bags at either end of the path, similar to the other parks, would help to keep the park clean. So we're just asking for the right to erect a bird bath and table for playing chess or similar games, and rubbish bins. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tostervin. Ms. Hewitt, do you wish to speak as seconder? Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? If not, I'll put that motion by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Ms. Kwok, notice of motion number 14. And I'll just look. Hurst. Thank you. Seconding. Thank you.
Michelle Kwok, Ocean Reef. This motion is to ask the city to advocate to the state government for mandatory public consultation on the installation of the telecommunications infrastructure, including 5G towers and small cell towers, to ensure community concerns are adequately addressed. The recent decision by the Western Australian Planning Commission to bypass community consultation regarding the 5G tower in Ocean Reef has caused significant anxiety and frustration among local residents. Public consultation is a cornerstone of good governance and helps ensure transparency, trust, and the opportunity for community members to voice their concerns or ask questions about potential health, environmental and aesthetic impacts. Western Australia's lack of third-party appeal rights exacerbates the situation, leaving residents feeling excluded from decision-making processes that directly affect them. It is essential for the state government to mandate meaningful public consultation on telecommunications infrastructure to ensure the communities are informed, empowered, and respected. By adopting this motion, the Council will send a strong message to the state government that public consultation is not just a courtesy, but a necessity. This will help foster a more collaborative approach to planning and decision-making, particularly for infrastructure projects that impact local communities. Please support this motion.
Thank you, Ms. Kwok. Mr. Hurst? You don't wish to speak as seconder. Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? If not, I'll put that motion by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Ms. Hope, for notice of motion number 15, and seconder Salat. So I'll put Bettina Gould down as seconder. Ms. Hope. Thank you.
Jacqueline Hope, 136 Gradient Way, Belden. The motion addresses widespread concerns raised by members of our community regarding vaccine safety, transparency, and public health outcomes. As representatives of this community, it is your role to ensure these voices are heard and that concerns are elevated to the appropriate decision makers. By naming specific leaders and health authorities, we ensure that these issues reach those with the authority and expertise to take meaningful action. While public health may be seen as a state or federal responsibility, the well-being of our residents is at the heart of local government's purpose. Councils regularly advocate on matters impacting the health, safety and quality of life of their community, whether it's related to environmental, risks, urban planning or social programme. This motion follows the same principle by advocating for transparency, precaution and accountability in decisions that directly affect our community's health and safety. This motion does not ask the Council to make any determination about vaccine safety or public health policy. Instead, it simply requests that the relevant authorities, those with the expertise and jurisdiction, investigate these concerns thoroughly. By doing so, we ensure that our community's questions and concerns are taken seriously. Urging the suspension of these vaccines and requesting a thorough scientific evaluation of emerging evidence about potential synthetic DNA contamination reflects a precautionary approach and emphasises the importance of independent science-based investigations to maintain the highest standards of public health and safety. Investigating excess deaths and hospitalisation following vaccine rollout is equally essential. Such inquiries are made of public interest to provide clarity of any potential links and to ensure future health policies are informed by robust, transparent data. This motion is not intended to alarm, but rather to act responsibly on behalf, commitment to advocating for transparency and accountability and the well-being of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Hope. Ms Gould, as seconded, do you wish to speak?
So as the seconder of this motion, I have deep concern shared by many members of our community regarding transparency and accountability in public health decisions. This motion is not about creating alarm, as was just mentioned, but about advocating for thorough science-based investigations by the appropriate state and federal authorities into matters that affect us all. Our community has consistently raised questions about vaccine rollouts, including potential synthetic DNA contamination in the vaccines of COVID-19 and the concerning reports of excess deaths and hospitalisations. We believe it is reasonable and responsible to request independent evaluations and greater transparencies on these issues. This motion does not aim to pass judgment on vaccine safety or public health policies. That is the jurisdiction of higher levels of government. However, as a community, we have a right to ensure our concerns are being heard and addressed by those with the authority and expertise to investigate them thoroughly, and those here that are able to advocate for us. Transparency and precaution are key to maintaining public trust and ensuring the highest standards of safety. The potential synthetic DNA contamination in these vaccines is a serious matter that requires independent and unbiased scrutiny. Likewise, the reports of excess deaths and hospitalisations demand careful examination to provide clarity and to ensure public health policies are guided by robust, transparent data. It's also important to acknowledge that public health is not an abstract, distant concept. It directly affects the lives of every person in our community. By advocating for these investigations, we are simply seeking to ensure that decisions affecting our health and safety are grounded in clear science-based evidence and that our community concerns are taken seriously. The motion demonstrates our collective commitment to transparency, accountability, and the well-being of everyone in our community.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? Please, thank you.
Nicholas Alonso, Duncraig. What I'm about to say will not take away from the losses that these people have experienced in their family, possibly related to the impacts of the vaccine. But I might not be a medical doctor, but I am a chemical scientist or a chemist-based science. And the information about what is in the vaccine is very clearly put out. You can read that on their websites. It contains 2 types of phospholipid, which is very similar to what's used in the cell wall. Inside the vaccine, there is then a stabilizing polymer and then the COVID RNA within the vaccine. That is all is in the vaccine. The RNA is similar to what's in the COVID vaccine, but you have a controlled dose that is then administered to your arm muscle. That RNA can then has 2 actions in which the immune system will then interact with it. Either the immune system will interact with the RNA directly, or the body will make the protein from that RNA, and then the body will react to that protein. This process is much safer than contracting COVID itself, which is then an uncontrolled process where that COVID proteins will go all through your body. But because that COVID protein may be produced by your body, they may have side effects from that if they are susceptible specifically, and you can never quite tell how exactly someone's body will react to the presence of that COVID vaccine. It's my belief that the COVID vaccine was by far the safer option than just letting people getting COVID itself, as it was controlled and well understood, while the COVID virus itself was causing rapid deaths elsewhere around the world while we were safe behind our quarantine protections. Obviously, these people did suffer losses.
Thank you.
Very sorry for them.
Thank you. Further speaker for the motion? Sir, up the back, thank you.
Yeah, Brendan Callaroo, Waverton Court Callaroo. My background was a prison officer in the Department of Justice for 8 years. I am a private and government investigator, and I was in the prison system when they rolled out the vaccines, and there was questions from the officers within the prison that said, why is it an option for the prisoners to get a vaccine? And the response was, well, if we forced them, it'd be against their human rights. Those are prisoners, people who are incarcerated. Now, as an investigator, I've represented police officers, firemen, paramedics, doctors all over Australia. And the story keeps coming back where they've proven that family members, fellow colleagues, employees have substantially suffered as a result of these vaccines. A lot of them not been able to work again and now are being ignored by workers' compensation, and effectively a lot are becoming homeless and living on the streets as a result of complying and then being adversely injured, and then their injuries being downplayed, and then them not being able to work and having a condition for the rest of their lives. I've conducted my own investigations. I've been part of a very big law suit in WA against the state government when the rollouts happened. We've had some of the best scientists in the world come and testify within that court case, and they've acknowledged that science is not accurate and people are being injured and it should be withdrawn immediately. My investigations have resulted in a huge cover-up, and these vaccines are not safe and they shouldn't be rolled out, and it is of public concern, and the community is at risk if something isn't done very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have another speaker against the motion? If not, as mover, Ms Hope, do you wish to close debate?
Thank you for the response. All that I know is that I was in the health service for 40 years. We never had a term called turbo cancer. We never had people who complied with government regulations who were dead within less than 12 months, and that's happened to 2 of my colleagues in my age bracket. All that we're asking for is that this is never repeated. If you speak to funeral directors, they have never seen so many deaths of young people. I don't know if this was a deliberate act or not. All I know is that we can't risk ever having this level of effect of the public health ever again. And while I'm aware that the council does not have the wherewithal to stop this, you are our elected voices, and all we're asking is for you to please put forward our concerns. I'm very sorry for anyone in this chamber who has had a relative friend suffer from the adverse reactions of this injection. And I also know that I don't know one person who wasn't vaccinated who is dead or has adverse reactions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Hope. I'll put that motion by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you. I declare the motion carried. Next notice of motion is notice of motion number 16. Ms Gould and Wilson. C. Wilson, thank you.
Okay, so motion number 16 requests that Council instructs the Chief Executive Officer to ensure that the city's insurance coverage for volunteers includes individuals of all ages without imposing an upper or lower age restrictions. So volunteers play a vital role in supporting community initiatives and often step in to perform tasks that should rightfully be funded and staffed by the Council. Their contributions, whether through maintaining natural areas and amenities or organising community events, are indispensable and deserve due recognition and support. The city's current insurance policy, which limits coverage to volunteers aged 12 to 80, unnecessarily exclude many willing and capable individuals. With proper guidance, younger volunteers can gain valuable experience, while older volunteers bring a wealth of knowledge and skills to benefit the community. Age should not be a barrier to participation or recognition of their contributions. By ensuring the insurance policy covers volunteers of all ages, the city would support those who fill critical gaps in essential services while also demonstrating its commitment to inclusivity and the value of community contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Gould. Ms Wilson, do you wish to speak as seconder? Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? I'll put that motion then by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Notice of motion number 17, Mr Moore. As mover and Mr... Yep, absolutely. Yes. I'll just note, so I will note Mr Moore as the mover, but he's having some trouble speaking, so I'll ask Mr Dickey to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I apologise for Mr Moore. He's suffering some medical complications at the moment. We're talking about structure planning here. We're talking about the process that guides development and gives both landowners and owners and users of facilities in the areas confidence in the future use and form that is going to happen there. That allows them to invest and commit not just funds, but their enthusiasm. For instance, deciding to plant trees in their gardens. This first motion, number 17, relates to the Woodvale District Centre, which anyone who uses it would know has sort of grown over the years. It's an area that has a lot of accesses and a fairly complicated circulation pattern. Taken together with the library site behind, it's an area that could be integrated, could develop quite comprehensively, but it needs a structure plan to go with it. So I urge you to vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Dickey, does anybody wish to speak against the motion? If not, I'll put that motion by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Notice of motion number 18, Ms Hewitt.
Hewitt, Edgewater. The reason for this motion is that our members have been witnessing an increase in caravans, boats, sea containers and other collections of rubbish stored permanently on the verges. We have seen large verges recently concreted 100% over, with the potential of runoff once the winter storms arrive straight into the lake. We know the city has many local laws on such things as parking caravans permanently on verges and the use of non-water permeable finishes on verges. But if the city is unwilling to ensure these local laws are adhered to, why have them? Surely there needs to be an equitable use of these provisions, and for the people doing the right thing, but with neighbours who are doing the wrong thing, your support and challenge and help in challenging the behaviours would assist us all to enjoy our environment and our homes and to exit our properties safely.
Thank you. Mr Hewitt, as seconder, do you wish to speak? Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? I'll put that motion then by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you. I will declare that carried. Notice of motion number 19, Ms Gould. Ms Hope, do I have a seconder? I'll seek another seconder then. Mr Perez, thank you.
Okay, that the electors of the City of Joondalup request that Council instructs the CEO to include the supporting statements from the mover and seconder of each of the motions presented at the AGM to be published in the meeting minutes. So sometimes if we run out of time, it'd be useful to have this published, what we've all prepared tonight. So it's come to our attention that while public statements made during public statement time are recorded in the minutes, the supporting statements made by the mover and seconder of motions at an AGM are not always included. This omission can result in lack of transparency and loss of valuable context for the motions being presented. I guess especially for the members that aren't here tonight as well. So supporting statements are integral to understanding the intent, rationale and importance of a motion. These statements provide insight into the reasons behind the proposal and allow the community and council to engage with the motion in a more informed manner. By ensuring they are included in the minutes, the City would be fostering greater accountability and more comprehensive record of the AGM proceedings. So publishing these statements would also demonstrate respect for the democratic process and the voices of those who bring forward motions. It ensures that their perspectives are properly documented and accessible to the broader community. We believe this change would enhance the clarity, fairness and integrity of AGM records, ensuring that future decisions and discussions are informed by a complete account of the meeting procedures. Thank you.
Thank you. As seconder, do you wish to speak to the motion? Thank you. Is there any debate against the motion? If not, I'll put that motion by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Notice of motion number 20, Mr Moore, as mover, and asking Mr Dickey, who is also seconder, to speak to the motion. Thank you, Mr Dickey.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much for your indulgence in Mr Moore's difficulties at the moment. This motion number 20 is really the complement to motion number 9, and it suggests that it would be best for the Joondalup Edge area, the area between Joondalup Drive and the freeway, to become a precinct of its own and to have an appropriate precinct design prepared for that area alone. And that way we'll avoid the sort of thing that has happened in, well, Warwick, for instance, where, you know, a landowner has decided to build to the maximum. I urge you to endorse this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? In that case, I'll put that motion by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Notice of motion number 21, Ms Gould. Ms Kwok as seconder. Thank you, Ms Gould.
Okay, so this motion requests that we publish the guest list and expenditure for elected members' dinners and any formal city dinners on the city's website under the council and committee meetings page, and also reduce the number of elected member dinners. So under the current entitlement policy, the mayor and each ward councillor are entitled to host 6 dinners per year, totalling 12 dinners per ward. These events are intended for networking and community engagement. In addition, the city hosts other formal dinners. While stakeholder engagement is important, the cost and frequency of these dinners, including formal city-hosted events, raise concerns about the appropriateness of using ratepayer funds, the provision of 3-course meals, alcohol, etc. The city already publishes minutes for meetings, including attendances and discussion outcomes to ensure accountability. So given that these dinners aim to foster community engagement, applying the same level of transparency by publishing lists, including relationships to the city and detailing expenditure, will assure ratepayers the dinners are fulfilling their purpose, reinforce accountability for public funds, address concerns about any sort of favouritism or misuse of funds, expanding transparency to all formal city-hosted dinners ensures ratepayers are fully informed about how their money is spent. Additionally, reducing the number of elected members' dinners by 50% or thereabouts reflects a commitment to fiscal responsibility, as networking can be achieved more cost-effectively through existing city events or informal meetings. This motion aligns council practices with community expectations for responsible financial management and transparent governance.
Thank you, Ms Gould. Ms Kwok.
Michelle Kwok, Ocean Reef. While the purpose of these dinners is to foster community engagement and strengthen relationships, it's essential that public funds are used responsibly. Transparency is key to ensuring these events serve a clear and justifiable purpose, benefiting the broader community. Publishing guest lists including relationship to the city alongside expenditure details for all elected members' dinners and formal city-hosted dinners would provide a transparent account of how ratepayers' funds are being spent. This approach not only reassures ratepayers but also mitigates concerns about favoritism or misuse of public funds, as anecdotal evidence shows that some invitations may lack clear purpose or reflect undue favoritism, with mates reportedly being invited. At a time when many ratepayers are facing financial pressures, it's critical to evaluate whether so many of these dinners are truly necessary. While engagement with stakeholders is important, many discussions and networking opportunities can be achieved in more modest, cost-effective ways, such as informal meetings or leveraging existing city events. Transparent reporting includes all formal cities dinners, gives residents a full picture of how their money is spent on events of this nature, and allows for a thorough evaluation of whether these events provide sufficient value to justify their costs, ensuring that public funds are managed prudently and aligned with the community's expectations. Supporting this motion reflects the city's commitments to accountability, transparency, and fiscal responsibility, reinforcing trust in the city's governance and its dedication to serving the best interests of its residents. Please support the motion.
Thank you, Ms Kwok. Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? If not, I'll put that motion by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Notice of motion number 22, Mr Moore, and seconded Mr Dickey.
Thank you again, Mr. Moore. Mr. Mayor, on behalf of Mr. Moore, I'd like just to read this paragraph that says, local structure plans provide more specific detail on the proposed pattern of land use for an area, such as a residential neighbourhood or industrial area. These plans include details of location and density of housing, road layout and pedestrian cycle network, public open space, school sites, physical infrastructure, communities purpose sites and commercial centres. This is from a state government publication called Planning for People. And that's what this motion is about, what this series of motions are about, ensuring that planning is proactive and we plan for what people want and not just what business interests and development organisations want. This final motion is really ensuring that the whole of the city is covered by appropriate precinct plans and people know what's going to happen in their area, in their local shopping centre for years to come. I urge you to endorse this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Dickey. Does anybody wish to speak against the motion? I'll put that motion then and ask you to cast your votes. Those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Notice of motion number 23, Ms Gould. Ms Kwok as seconder. Thank you.
Okay, so the last item for the night, and it wouldn't be an AGM if we didn't mention weeds now, would it? So the supporting statement here is this motion arises from ongoing concerns raised by residents about the health and safety risks associated with chemical weed spraying in public areas. Time again, the community has voiced its dissatisfaction with the lack of visible markers that indicate where chemicals have been applied. I mean, we'd rather not have the chemicals at all. This issue particularly affects families with children playing barefoot in park, dog owners walking their pets, and anyone enjoying the natural spaces in our community. The use of marker dye is critical. Chemicals used for weed spraying can be absorbed through the skin or inhaled. Poisoning risks are for humans and animals alike. Residents need to feel confident that public spaces are safe and that they're informed about recent spraying activities, and we've seen some recent things lately where there's no blue dye, but there are signs in inappropriate places. So this is just a motion that we want consistency, we want this to be enforced. there is an inconsistent visibility of sprayed areas. It leaves people uncertain about which parts of the parks, reserves and footpaths are safe. By instructing the contractors, and some of them are new, so I appreciate that, and there's staff that have changed as well. So we just want us to be proactive and for the city to take these concerns seriously. The health of our community and the environment must take precedence. Clear marking of treated areas is not only a practical solution, but also a way to build trust and confidence again in the city's operations. So this motion addresses a long-standing issue that shouldn't be ignored. We just want it sort of tidied up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms Kwok, as seconder, do you wish to speak to the motion? Thank you.
Michelle Kwok, Ocean Reef. It has been obvious to a lot of us that the marker dye has been applied in a much diluted form and has questionable visibility. It is not serving its purpose to be visible, to warn the public after a poison has been applied. People are then unable to avoid the treated areas, especially when young children and animals are involved. Why waste ratepayers' money using it when it's not used properly? We have this issue when it was first used after council resolution in August 2020. It was only lasting 2 hours then. It took months to resolve that problem. We have come a long way to have a marker dye lasting for at least 2 to 3 days. How long it is visible for is dictated by the concentration used and the weather conditions. It is summer and blue dye fades very quickly in the sun. When a weak concentration is used in the summer months, it exacerbates the problem. Council has noticed a near invisible marker dye in the past and subsequently has asked the city to use the highest concentration. Since then, we have a change of staff and contractors and the message is lost. Hopefully this motion is ensuring consistency in weed spraying practices. Addressing this will maintain a good standard of operation in the city and it will mitigate potential problems in health and safety. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Kwok. Is there anybody who wishes to speak against the motion? If not, I'll put that motion by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? I declare that carried. Thank you. That now concludes the AGM of Electors meetings. All of the motions carried this evening will be referred to a future council meeting for consideration. There being no further business, I hereby declare the meeting closed at 7:46 p.m. Thank you for your attendance.